We shall begin. All right, so welcome to this evening's proceedings of the GRPS Finance Committee. I will read our safety protocols and we'll begin our meeting. Before we begin the proceedings of our committee meeting, I will highlight our safety protocols and expectations. Due to CDC guidance placing Kent County in the substantial risk category for transmission of the COVID-19 Delta variant, we are requiring masks indoors for anyone on the grounds of the Grand Rapids Public Schools property, for all students, staff, and visitors regardless of vaccination status. If you need a mask, these are available at the entrances. Public comment cards and meeting agendas are located on the tables within the board chambers at both entrances. Once you fill out a comment card, please submit this in the drop box next to the comment cards. Our board assistant will collect the cards when I call for public comment. I will call on each individual one at a time to address the committee at the presentation table. On behalf of the Finance Committee and Administration, thank you for being here in attendance with us. All right, I do not see any public, so there is no public comment. So we'll move into our business items. The first agenda item is finance action items, our purchasing agenda. Mr. Oberst.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Schontke, Dr. Baker, Dr. Flores. Welcome, first Finance Committee of the new calendar year. So. First is the purchasing agenda, and I'm going to throw it up here on the screen. Again, just I don't know if there's anything out of the ordinary here. We the first power schools, we did go live with the update on November 1st. There's still we're working out some bugs. It took us a little bit, some challenges to get the W-2s completed, but we got them out in the mail on Friday, so they're in the hands of our employees today. And we have an upgrade coming through probably starting next month, and then we're going to add some functionality to it over the next few months. So we need to update that or upgrade or add on to that blanket or request $125,000. So that's the first one there. And then a couple of requests for training for Montessori teachers, elementary and secondary level. It's under support materials. Then some ESSER spending under Section 2 there, A, enrichment instructional courses to renew our Zoom license, which we are still using quite frequently. Coaching services for several of the schools, as you can see there in number 3. Then number 4 is Title I and Title IV. We still run those programs, obviously, for the non-public schools, and that's a request for expenditures on behalf of the Grand Rapids Christian schools. And then under B, support materials, you can see there some more ESSER spending under Item 1. Instructional materials for 40 classrooms. And then a license renewal for Tableau software, which enables us to build graphs and charts with some of the data off our Synergy. Now, as part of the ESSER funding, we acquired the Synergy Analytics module and add-on. So this license will just be, this will be a fun year for that license going forward. The Synergy Analytics module will allow us to do a lot of what this Tableau software enabled us to do for the last number of years. And then another item as part of an ESSER funding, a capital item. I think many of you are aware we've been involved in a Southwest Elementary playground design utilizing help from Kendall?
Site studio, yeah.
Yes, and students and staff and parents. We're at the point now where we needed to actually hire a designer to be able to take all their ideas, put it into a buildable design. So through a RFP process, we did that, and we are recommending that we engage MCSA Group at a cost of $36,251 to get that going so we can get working on that playground. Hopefully, well, it all depends, but we'd like to get started this summer if we can. We'll have to see. So that's a purchasing agenda for today. And Ms. Schontke, when we spoke on Wednesday, I thought what we were missing was the was a central innovation, and I apologize, it was actually this playground.
the playground,
Design
okay.
we were waiting
Yeah.
on, so that,
Very good.
so. Any questions?
All right, if there's no questions, may I have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right,
Great.
motion carries.
Thank you. The next three items are the budget amendment 1 for the 3 funds we have to, by law, budget for. I'm going to jump first down to the special revenue and debt retirement, which are not significant. Then I'll invite Rhonda up to the table, and she can go over the general fund, which, in her words, as long as she's been around, is the largest amendment 1 she's ever had to deal with, and that's by virtue of a lot of the unknowns back in June when you adopted the first budget. So special revenue, and I got in the screen here, again, it's made up of several individual funds, the largest of which being the food service. And there is no fund balance requirement. If you look at the amendments, they're just a minor, about $70,000 amendment to the expenditure side, and about $20,000 to the revenue side. So not much going on there. And that's really all I want to say about that. Any questions on the special revenue? And then the debt retirement fund, I'll talk a little bit more about a piece of this under our report section as it relates to our refunding. But the First Amendment for the debt retirement typically firms up the tax revenue based on the assessed values. They're not quite finalized when we adopt the budget in June, so this reflects the updated assessed values. It also reflects, if you can see here, under other financing sources. We talked earlier, I think back in October, you approved a small bond refunding to give us some flexibility going forward. That was completed on December 21st. We refunded about $9.5 million, so that's the proceeds. And then we also took some of the additional money we had in our debt retirement fund, this $2 million approximately, and used that to fund down here on other financing uses, payment to the escrow agent to pay off those bonds in the future. So that really is just what we have there in the debt retirement fund. I'll talk a little bit more detail about the bond refunding later in the meeting here. So any questions on debt retirement? All right, I'm going to invite Rhonda up, and she can chat about the general fund.
Larry,
Oh, good.
I was going to say, as Larry mentioned, this is the largest amendment I think I've ever seen in the 20-plus years I've been here. So largely due to all of the additional federal funding that we've got. In addition to that, in our foundation allowance, when we did the original budget, we had planned for a $250 per pupil increase. And it actually came in September when the legislature and the governor approved it at a $589 per pupil increase. So our new foundation allowance is now $8,700 per pupil. Our enrollment is actually up slightly from what we had budgeted as well. So we're up about 200 students above that. So our overall increase on the foundation allowance is about $6 million. And you'll see that in a couple spots in there, property tax revenue, and then the membership revenue down under state sources. Some of the
So if
other...
you look at just line B, the top there's that tax revenue she talked about, and then line N under state sources, 3.2 million. So those are the two pieces of the foundation allowance increase to 589.
It also hits line O for the special ed piece on that.
Thank you.
The other ones on there, special ed transportation revenue, line C. We receive revenue through the ISD for special ed transportation, and because our special ed, but it's kind of got a year lag on it. So because of our virtual learning through most of last year, our special ed transportation costs were down significantly. So this year we've got an adjustment downward. This year when the revenue or the expenses are back up, it will go back up for next year, but it's just kind of a weird timing type thing. The Act 18 revenue and the enhancement millage revenue, we receive a portion of the county, so that's just an adjustment to where the actual is coming in at this point. Going down to state sources, again, the section 147, that when we do the original budget, it's an estimate of what GRPS will receive out of statewide revenue. So when we start to get indication usually comes on November state aid, that we're up $1 million there estimated. There are a couple new state aid categoricals in there. Two of them are smaller, the section 99Z first year teacher and the 25J virtual learning. And then there is another new one there, section 56 for special education millage. That's one that's coming through the ISD. They're receiving it and passing it through to the locals. So total state revenue is going to be up in general operating at 5.7 million.
So on line AI here,
Yep.
is the total?
And then switching over to grants, and this is where you'll see the big piece. Grant revenue, an original amendment, original adoption, we've put in what we planned for, but then we've gotten new grant awards. We're also recording carryover for the grants that go through September 30th. We don't know what that is until later. So we're recording the carryover now. And then additional, there's the adjusted to projected grant awards. So just going down through those, they're listed out in more detail, some of the larger grants in there. So you've got the XQ, that's carryover, and I don't need to read these all to you, so.
And just excuse me, and just to remind the committee that the grants column here has zero impact on fund balance. So essentially, as Rhonda indicated, we determine first what we think we're going to spend, and that really drives then the revenue amount equals the expenditures. So it has no impact on fund balance.
So under the, keep sliding down. Some smaller adjustments into the state grants as well. But the larger ones are going to be under those federal grants. And that's where you'll see Title 1A and Title 2, that's our carryover amounts that are coming on. And then you get into the big COVID funding grants and bringing on either carryover or additional planned spending for this year for the total federal sources of $22 million.
And you can see there on lines AR and AS and AT, those are the ESSER-related grants that ESSER 2, 3, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but that's how much we are, well, an increase what we intend to use in the current fiscal year. And then the GEAR grant on line AW, that was one of the grants we received. That must have been, let me get my year straight here, in probably late calendar 2020, I think, yeah. And we have until September of 2022 to spend that. Is that right?
No,
The
we've
GEAR?
got until June.
June of 2022 to spend the remainder of the ESSER Education Equity Grant. So, and that's been one of those things I've talked earlier, those earlier grants and the timing, we were moving things around to make sure we were able to utilize them completely. In many cases, there were similar things we could spend for these grants. And then based on timing and other issues, we had to move things around. So our plan would be to have, right now, the ESSER equity grants, so line AT and line AW, as Rhonda just indicated, spent by the end of this fiscal year. So those will get out of the mix. And essentially all we will probably have left going forward will be, and the ESSER formula grant too, line AQ, we also hope to have spent by the end of this fiscal year. Then really it's just ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, the major ESSER programs we have, with ESSER 3 going until mid-2024 at this point in time. So.
The question on the decreases in LEP funding, AN, and then AZ, the decrease in IDEA pre-primary impaired. Wondering, is there any rationale behind those that we know of?
It's just, again, we get a preliminary estimate of what our LEP grant was going to be, and it came in a little bit less. But our Section 41 is a lot larger, so it's, in general, we'll still have quite a bit to spend on the EL learners, but.
Okay, but it has nothing to do with student count or?
Not
just
that I'm aware of.
Funding in general from the feds?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we do get our allocation through MDE. It's not as clear cut as the other Title I and Title II.
It's rather interesting that, because they are one of the at-risk special pops.
You can see here on line AE, right, Rhonda, that's
Yeah.
Section 41 grant, we were increasing it almost 270,000, so we frankly were surprised when that came through that much higher than it was, significantly higher than we'd gotten in prior years, so.
But above that is the decrease in the at-risk 31A, but.
Again, some of that is just the way we budget in that estimating and carryover, and so moving on to expenses. As you know, we've had salary and compensation adjustments as new agreements have been reached. So those are on there in both line BD and BK for instruction and support services. That's also offset a little bit by when we do our original budget, we budget to have all positions filled. And as you know, we're running a large number of vacancies. So it's, multiple parts are in those large numbers, but it's not as high as we thought it would be for the total compensation adjustment due to the vacancies that are there. Substitutes and instructional services are running a little bit higher, again, because we've had so many vacancies. We're trying to use outside temp agencies to fill positions where we can.
So the salary and benefit adjustment, 1.79. So that's the adjustment after the contract.
Yeah, that's our estimate for remainder of the year, both line BD and BK, of what all the unions got increases in compensation, as well as you may recall, a lot of our building administrators and central office personnel by virtue of that comp study we did. And then also include that salary and benefit adjustment. The hard cap increased on January 1st. Part of that is, well, both of those areas. The salary increases came, the latest one was the teachers, which was in December. So it's the estimate of what we think the increase of the remainder of the years, although it hasn't fully played itself out yet, as well as we had open enrollment, which also took effect on January 1st. So we're estimating what those changes might be in terms of hard cap going up and what people chose when they re-enrolled in benefit programs. So
I guess my question is that number an increase from what the previous contract was, or is that all these other things that you're just talking about, like hard cap.
This is the increase over what we had estimated at our budget back in June. And it's mostly driven by the salary and benefit increases I just talked about.
Okay,
Okay?
so that means that we increased the salary and benefit adjustment 1.79 more than we thought we would increase.
Right.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's not a total increase.
Right.
No, that's correct.
Right.
And again, we frankly tend to be a little more conservative in the First Amendment, as I mentioned, there's still a lot of unknowns out there, and we intend to bring a Second Amendment as we normally do probably in May as usual, so.
So just going down through their purchase services, the biggest part there, again, is our software upgrade is going through there. Advertising and staff recruitment, there's some of that where we had planned to use it out of ESSER funding, out of the plan that you saw in July and approved. It's actually going to run through a lot of that through our general fund. Repairs and maintenance costs are running higher too, so we've got an increase there as well. So on the grant related, you'll see big numbers in there for the BH and line BP. Those are the expense adjustments related to the revenue adjustments that we saw above, so. And one thing with these larger ESSER grants coming through, we do get to charge an indirect cost. So that's what you'll see on line BT, the 1.3 million. We are charging indirect costs to those federal grants. Therefore, it comes in as a credit and offsets our general fund or general operating expense. So, which is nice because our operating costs have not really gone up that much. So it's kind of an easy way for us to build some fund balance.
So in the end, we had total revenue increases up here, as you can see, of 31.654 million approximately. Total expenditure increases of, again, both grant and non-grant, 28.3 million. You look at the top here, the budget you passed back in June had us using about 2.1 million of fund balance. This we're going to pick up about 3.3 million of fund balance. So the net there, about $1.2 million of an increase in fund balance by virtue of Amendment 1. And let me throw up here. This is what the fund balance looks like. Estimates, you can see going back to our 2018 audited financials where we have run in terms of fund balance. You may recall at the end of 2021, the yellow column here, we picked up a significant amount of fund balance, like over $8 million, largely because of not starting, being virtual for more than half the year, and then some of the earlier ESSER funding, other funding we'd use to backfill, if you will, some of the fund balance, or some of the general fund. So we ended the year, last year, at about 12.9% fund balance. This is the initial budget back in June you approved. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to use some of that. It's going to get us down to 6.23 based on the original fund balance we thought we were going to get in 2021. And now after Amendment 1, we're estimating a fund balance end of the year of 20.2 million, approximately 13.7% of fund balance. Board policy being a goal of 10% with a range of between 5 and 15%. So just to give you some perspective there. And you can see, if we hit that bogey, certainly since 2000, it'd be the highest since 2018. Yeah. We'll talk a little bit later about the revenue estimating conference and what it looks like from a state foundation allowance perspective for the 22-23 year, but it's all, quite frankly, pretty positive right now. So.
So this is a broader structural question. On the on the board, since you brought up the board policy. So I was part of that policy creation, I believe, but certainly I've been operating under it since at least when I got on the board in 2008. The 5 to 15 was the policy, but that was always like, such a hypothetical that, I mean, because it's
Back
like,
then, I'm sure it was.
I mean, it's like 15%. Sure, we can put 15% down. What the heck? I mean, after all, I mean, there's no way we're going to get there. So why not have it at 5 to 15? I like to think about. I don't know what. I mean, I like to when my checkbook looks like there's a lot of money in it. I think I'm richer than I actually am because it's going to go down. But I think that it would be nice, especially with what seems to be happening with the budget revenue conference, that I'd like to perhaps ask you're going to be the treasurer for the year?
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't just last year's treasurer.
Correct.
This is really just reconsider that policy and to have like an updated, what does this look like for the next 10-year kind of policy instead of operating under a decision that was made in 2008 when, if you guys remember 2008 and 2009, my first couple of years on the board, that was the first of many cliffs that we were supposed to go through. And that was when all heck was going to break loose and we were scrapping for every dollar that we could find. And now we're still scrapping for every dollar we find. I say that because, 13%, when we've been making decisions in the past off of whether or not we could afford 5.8 versus 5.6, and I just think that if we can afford to spend that money, I know that this could go away in 3 years too, and we can be back to 5.6.
A lot of
So I'm not
consideration.
suggesting
No.
that we change our policy. I just wouldn't mind having some sense of how do we have a crisis in hiring right now, and we have a crisis. It seems like everything's in crisis except our budget. And so how do we use the budget to help alleviate the consequences of those crises? But in a long term, not asking us to change our policy in January, but perhaps this committee can consider that. So, in other words, this is my last year on the board, so I'm like,
Yeah, it feels very much, and I think Mr. Ober said this too in our call last week, just like it's a snapshot in time.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like we really even understand yet, even with the ESSER 3 funds out there. I mean, our second budget budget amendment could be as interesting as this one, right? Just with what will come in the next couple of months. But yeah, I think just continuing to have a dialogue around what does a financially healthy district look like, and how does that impact what this policy looks like around fund development, or fund balance, excuse me.
And, obviously what plays into it is sustainability when the ESSER funds run
Right.
out.
Right.
And that's,
Right, I think that's most important.
Yeah,
because
no
I
question about it.
understand that.
Yeah.
But I guess I just don't think that if we land here just because the policy says 5 to 15%, and 5 years from now, 8 years from now, we're consistently at 13%, just because we're within those policy constraints, it's still not a policy that this board has considered. It's a policy that generations ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Any questions on any of the amendments? If not, I need separate actions on each of the funds, general, special revenue, and debt retirement fund to approve and move forward to the full board on next Monday, please.
Okay. Very good. We'll go through them one at a time here. So we'll start with the general fund. So may I please have a motion to move forward the adoption of Budget Amendment 1,
Thanks,
general
Rhonda.
fund?
Support.
All right,
Let's
all
do
in
that.
favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. Okay, Special Revenue Fund, may I have a motion, please, for adoption, recommendation of adoption of Budget Amendment 1?
So moved.
Support.
Great, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good, motion carries. And lastly, the Debt Retirement Fund, a motion, please, to move forward the adoption of Budget Amendment 1.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Then we have to end up the action items. We have 3 donations that need your approval and acceptance. The first being from Fence Consultants for a 4-foot tall fence. You can see in your packet there along the east side of Stockton Elementary School parking lot, is valued at $3,200. Second one being Spartan Nash. They've donated 35 individual hand sanitizers that we've looked at. It meets our requirements, and that's valued at just over $2,700. And then our friend, who's become our friend, Sherry Lynn Noah and her friends, another donation of a number of things there, primarily a lot of winter clothing. And you may recall, she also collected it just prior to Christmas. This committee approved a large, what was that valued at, Mary, about 18,000 too back then before Christmas? Yeah. And most were distributed. So most of these, or all these, we look at needs within our buildings, and these will be going to Cesar Chavez Elementary School students. And she's always looking to collect more things for us too. So she's become, and she does this for more than just Grand Rapids. She's actually a resident of Forest Hill School, but she likes doing this, and we're great. So any questions on any of the donations? Need separate action on each of those, please, to accept those, if you would.
Right. May I please have a motion to move forward the donation from Fence Consultants of West Michigan?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. May I please have a motion to move forward the donation from Spartan Nash?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And lastly, a motion, please, to approve the donation, move forward the donation from Sherry Lynn Noah and friends.
So moved.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to the reports and updates discussion, the first being the financial statements for December. We just amended, or you just approved the amendments, which will be reflected next month, but as it relates to the first 6 months of the year, we're tracking as we expect to track, if you will, and nothing out of the ordinary going on from that perspective. As we just talked about, it's financially, it's a much better outlook than it has been in the past. Long bond construction update.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Southwest High, everything's complete and no issues that we're aware, so I'm gonna stop.
You probably got rid of the leak.
Union project's essentially complete. There's a bank of lockers that we're still waiting on and some furniture in the media center. Otherwise, we're working on some mechanical issues with some mechanical units right now. With the really cold weather, we've been getting some tripped units, so we've been staying on top of that. Ottawa and Union Roof has paused. They're going to come back in the spring to complete those. Union was about 90%, Ottawa maybe 50% complete when they finished, or when they stopped. Secured entry, everything's complete, no issues that we're aware of. So now we have new secured entries at Congress, Mulek Park, Shawmut Hills, Kenosha, and North Park. Innovation Central, we're about 90% complete with the construction documents. We've received bids for bid package 1, which we got approved, which is most of the exterior envelope items. We received bids last week for bid package 2, which is pre-purchasing the mechanical equipment, which we're going through post-bid interviews this week and hopefully get a recommendation by the end of the week. And then bid package 3 with the remainder of the project is going out near early March, with the construction still planning on this summer. So those are all the bond projects we have going on right now.
Questions on any of that? Great, thanks, Long. Item 3 there under reports is a bond refunding update. As I mentioned earlier, the board approved a small refunding that was completed we closed on December 21st. We did this to give us a bit additional flexibility in case we need some future bonding pending the outcome of the facility strategic plan. And we invited, this was essentially a limited bid situation, so we invited quotes or bids from several financial institutions. The winning bidder was Macatawa Bank. So we refunded $9.5 million of the 2019 bond issue in two separate bond payments, the first being in May of 2023 and the other one being May of 2024. The net interest rate to us on that was 0.892, and we got in just in time. As you know, rates are going up, long-term rates. That'll also save the district, I believe that essentially $5 million over the remaining life of those 2019 bonds. So benefited us financially, our taxpayers financially, as well as gave us flexibility the next couple of years if we decided we wanted to do some additional bonding for whatever purposes we had. So very successful. Another bond-related issue that is not on your agenda because it just came through on Friday, actually, is we had our annual review by Moody's. Moody's is a bond rating agency, and they, with our outstanding bonds, they always do a bond update review. And a couple of years ago, during the course of that review, they downgraded us one category and also gave us a negative outlook. So what has happened now, good news is they affirmed the A3 rating, which is still investment grade, but they took away the negative outlook, so which is all positive. And that was, like I said, just released on Friday. So that's a good thing in terms of that. Any questions on the bond information?
Send them a little note saying thanks for standing by our children.
ESSER update. The ESSER 2 application, and that is, reminds you, about $33 million. That was filed, we actually filed the first time last fall, and then at that time, you may recall, only a portion of the ESSER $2 had been allocated by the state legislature while they were still working out their differences, and when they did that, they released the remainder of that, so we amended the application for the full amount of $33 million, and that was approved. The ESSER 2 application was approved just, I forget now, prior to Christmas? Yeah, just prior to the holiday. So, and we'd actually spent some of that money prior to approval, and now we will continue to spend that. That has a final spending deadline of 2023, about June, July of 2023, $33 million. ESSER 3, and that's the Biden's ESSER plan. As I mentioned before, much more significant application process, more restrictions on the money, a lot more information. The application was over 30 pages. That was filed on December 15th. And we are still waiting, and many school districts filed on December 15th. There's a number that still haven't filed. A portion of that has a deadline of February 15th. Ours being as large and as significant as it is, that's going to take some time. MDE is not even given estimates anymore. So we don't know where the ESSER 3 application is. Because of the complexity, we suspect we're going to get some comments back and questions and probably have to make some adjustments before they approve it. I also do need to mention ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we can amend those applications at any point in time. So, and much like the title programs, we can only spend what's in the application. So as we change our spending, we'll have to amend the application down to the dollar we spend going forward. That has a spending deadline right now of again, June, July of 2024. It's been a lot of dialogue, including some of the folks who were out in Washington last week or a weekend ago about potentially extending that ESSER 3 deadline because of supply chain issues. As you know, some of those spending categories require us to hire some people and partner with community organization for, as an example, mental health and social emotional services, and no one has people. It's been very, very difficult, and so they don't extend the deadline. There'll probably have to be some strategies we'll have to look at to preserve that ESSER $3, which is again about $74 million to us. So the ESSER 2, the $33 million will by and large tide us through right now as we're waiting for the ESSER 3 to be approved, and then once that's approved, whenever that happens, we'll start be able to spend those dollars. There was, as part of the ESSER 3 application, there was this notion in the original legislation, although additional guidance hadn't been issued yet, regarding what's called the maintenance of equity, which is a new concept in federal grants. It's not maintenance of effort, which has been around for a while, but maintenance of equity. And basically, it wants to ensure that our high poverty buildings, in our case, are getting their, if you will, fair share of the ESSER $3. Or in other words, if there is a reduction of funding for whatever reason, that those high poverty district or school buildings are not, the reduction is no more than what the average is for the rest of the buildings. So it asks you to identify the top quartile of high poverty districts. They haven't finalized guidance yet. It's another administrative nightmare, quite frankly. We have to do that every year.
Pretty much all of our schools.
Exactly. Yeah, they are, but we have to now identify all of them, the top 25% that are the most, and that's where we're not quite sure, or they haven't quite worked it out yet, MDE, in terms of the calculation. It's based on a per pupil funding, essentially all state and federal dollars, but some more of the details is yet to be released. So just more stuff we have to go through for those dollars and keep track of as we go forward here through mid 2024. Once the ESSER 3 is approved and we'll be required to post that application on our website, we will also have to post our back to school plan. Believe it or not, since we've been in school for a year now, but that back to school plan that we did for the state way back in, would have been 2020, right now is sufficient for what we will post when the ESSER 3 application is approved. But we have to update that plan within 6 months. We've been in school, we want to stay in school, so I don't think the update will be that significant, but it'll have to be updated. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. Any questions on ESSER? And you'll be hearing this every month, probably until 2024, until it's spent. The last report was the vendor fair, which we had a couple of weeks ago. It was a virtual, really how to do business with Grand Rapids. So we had a morning session, and there were about 46 folks that dialed into the morning session, and we had an evening session, another 15 or 16 essentially dialed into that. Went really well. We gave them, kind of a primer on how to do business with us, directed them to our website where they could find information. Got a lot of good questions. Got a lot of leads on some local folks that would like to do. In fact, a couple cleaning service, and of course, we need cleaners and those kinds of things. So it was very worthwhile, and, you know, it also in contact, we gave them information on who to contact, you know, primarily purchasing, but, you know, some had questions on some academic programs they'd like to introduce, and so we told them how to connect with our academic team to discuss that first, and so it went really well. Mrs. Williams dialed in also. She had some comments to begin the both sessions with. It's something that we will continue to do on a, you know, maybe a quarterly basis. One of the things we discuss probably going forward, one of the things to do is maybe to have a more specific in terms of this was an overall purchasing, but more specific to like MIS purchasing. It's a little bit different for the MIS needs. Construction, a little bit different for the construction needs. So for those that are in those particular areas, give them a little more detailed information and more specific questions they can ask about construction or MIS or academic programs. So we'll target at some of those areas that are more specialized in our purchasing arena. But all in all, it went well. We got a lot of thank yous for doing that, and
Well, thank you for
it was great.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any
So-
plans to track metrics? How many?
Pardon me?
Do you have any plans to track metrics? How many vendors show up, and then how many actually?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be able to track. We are going to track any new vendors that may come out of
Yeah,
this
great.
whole thing. Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Nice.
Any questions on that? All right, we're down to policy here, and again, the big thing was on the 14th was a revenue estimating conference. State does it twice a year in May, January and May. Table 2 is I'm going to focus on first that net SAF revenue, kind of the middle top here. And just to interpret what we're looking at here, the May 2021, this is the estimates for fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023 that they made back in May 2021. And then here is the staff consensus for 2022 in January. So you can see what happened is the revenue estimates went up almost $1 billion from what they were estimating back in May. May, they're estimating 15.1 million. Now they're estimating almost 16.1 million. So $947 million increase in the estimate of revenue into the school aid fund for fiscal year 2022. And then 2023, they were estimating 15.4 billion. Now it's 16.5 million. So an increase of $819 million. And you can see up here at the general fund also positive increases from May. So now this is just state revenue from all the sources that fund. It does not include, I believe there's about 5 or 6 billion with a B of ARP money that we got from the feds that is still unallocated. And I think we'll see some of that allocation in the budgeting process. The governor is scheduled right now to release her 22-23 budget on February 9th, and that's the starting point. If you go to table 3 here, which is really the balance sheet side, if you will, of this is school aid fund, you can see the 2021 fiscal year estimate, and they haven't fully closed it out yet, but they estimate to have a excess fund balance of 2.8 billion, almost 2.9 billion. The 2022, beginning with the $2.8 billion beginning fund balance. Now this is what they were budgeting in the 21-22 year so far. And if they don't make any expenditure changes to that, to the current year budget, will end this year. Again, this is the state fiscal year, so it'll be September 30th, 2022 of 3.6 billion. in the school aid fund, and then carrying forward to the 22-23 year, $4.8 billion. So the state is not going to leave that much money on the table in those. So it would translate to, we believe, a healthy increase in the foundation allowance, as well as allow the governor and the legislature, hopefully, to target funding to those other areas that we've been talking about, from the school funding collaborative that came out with a report several years ago, based on needs of the district. So we would expect to see more funding in the special ed area, ESL area, those kinds of things too. So you saw the use of our ESSER dollars and what the amendments, and then we're looking at, again, some good, healthy revenue to the state, which may translate into some big state dollars too. So it is all very positive from a financial perspective, and even the governor in her state address has indicated that it's good times right now, and maybe we'll get the damn roads fixed too with the general fund budget.
You
So.
got a few months.
The other thing that goes on at the Revenue Estimating Conference as part of that is the estimate of the statewide public school enrollments. And, we've continued to see a decrease overall. The decrease year over year, 21-22 over 2021 was only about 200 pupils. We had a big loss, as you may recall, in the 2021 year. No, 1920 year because of COVID. And then next year, they're looking at another about 4,800 student decrease. And then the 23-24 year, another 5,200. So about 10,000 fewer students over the next couple of years that are enrolled on an FTE basis that would be enrolled in public schools. And both in the state of Michigan and nationally, the enrollments in homeschooling are up double digits. So again, we know some of those students are there. Some of the students are in other private schools, Christian, Catholics. Others have left the state for whatever reason. So we continue to see decreases, as we knew, in enrollments going forward. So.
Thanks for shifting that from the high note to.
Any questions on any of that information
You won't leave
from
with that
perspective?
I have a question. If we
Sure.
Go back to maintenance of equity requirements for ESSER funds.
Yeah.
Wondering if we could get information on that as to what that policy looks like and the rationale behind it, and what expectations they would have of us for those funds and for any application or distribution of funds. I would assume that it deals with the way in which we distribute funds to the various buildings in terms of current practices and future practices.
Yeah, except that the ESSER dollars, as you know, are they're not on a building by building basis per se. We obviously have programs that benefit all our buildings equally. The one good thing, and I forgot to mention this, so thank you, Dr. Flores, is we'll have to go through this measurement, but given we just talked about in terms of the revenue, we're not in a funding cut environment. It doesn't look like we're going to be the next couple of years. So maintenance of equity is, the way we understand it now, is basically focused on if you make cuts in funding, that those higher poverty buildings aren't cut any more than anybody else. But I don't see us making any cuts in funding.
Okay.
So
you're
it
saying
should not have been we still have to go through the gyrations to show that. But we can get you the details once we get final stuff on that. But fortunately, for the next couple of years at least, I don't think we'll have to deal, have to be concerned about not hitting those parameters, so.
But you also alluded, it sounds like there's already equity expectations in place for funding buildings at equitable levels.
Well, clearly. I mean, the additional academic supports and social emotional supports that, we budget on a district-wide basis, but when the boots hit the ground, they're obviously, whatever the building's needs are is what they're gonna get in terms of those additional amounts, so yeah.
So that's interesting. So in a way, you could actually unequitably increase budgets as long as you're not unequitably decreasing.
As far as ESSER, as far as ESSER is concerned, yeah.
Because, from the standpoint of a strategic plan, and as we look at our resources and equitably distributing those resources with equity in mind, it means for a disproportionality impact on various buildings based on their needs. I mean, we would have to accommodate that, and that has been a long-standing issue at the federal level with Title I and with other federal programs that are supplemental, and I think at the state level too, looking at the history of funding, to make sure that the funds go to the highest need students.
Right.
And actually begin to address the needs of the children, because school, in an urban neighborhood that is not a specialty school, for instance, so that we can deal with the two-tiered effect of instructional services delivery and try to correct some of those through additional funding. And so when I look at that, I see the need for more information.
Yeah, which I believe is one of the many initiatives coming out of strategic planning
It
as
is.
well. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That will be in the
Yeah.
works as we move forward with those initiatives. Okay, great. So only other thing I believe is just a reminder of our committee meeting schedule, which was included in the board packet. So just a reminder that we're going to move this meeting to 4:30 p.m. Dr. Flores?
We are going
Yes.
to. Okay,
Yep.
I was looking at the messages and.
Yeah, just this one, since it was a carryover from the 2021 committees.
4:30.
Moving forward, yep, so February
Okay.
4:30, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Baker, thank you for your services last year. I know we're losing a Dr. Baker. We are gaining a Kim Davis on the committee, so it'll be her first time serving.
That's a good trade, I think.
That's right, absolutely, very, very much so. All right, well, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank